Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. After moving to Paris from Canada in 1996, Rosa created the first food tour company in the city, Paris Market Tours. It's now called Edible Paris. She was the editor of Time Out Eating and Drinking in Paris and a prolific freelance food writer for a decade before settling in Nice in the south of France, where she now runs a cooking school called Les Petites Farcies. Rosa never tires of tasting French pastries and perfecting classic and updated recipes. Please welcome to the show, Rosa Jackson. So welcome to the show, Rosa. I'm so happy to have you here today. I've been following your work for a while.
Oh, thank you.
And I got to visit your school in the south of France where you offer cooking classes and market classes. And I just want to talk a little bit to you about what you do and how you got your start. So can you tell listeners where you're from and what brought you to France?
Sure. So I was born in Canada. My parents were actually from Europe originally, so we always had a connection to Europe. And when I was young, we lived in Paris for a year. So the first year we lived there, I was 4 years old. And we went back for another year when I was 12. So at a very young age, I was lucky enough to learn French. But I also discovered French food and became really passionate about it. So when I got back to Canada, I was trying to recreate some of these things I had tasted. And that was really the beginnings, I guess, the seed for me of living in France later. And it was always something that I had in the back of my mind, even though I stayed in Canada for university. I started working for a newspaper in Canada as a food writer. You know, I was just there in this very cold place thinking, you know, sitting at my desk, looking out the window, and it was minus 30 degrees. And I thought, I need to do something, you know, I need to, if I'm going to live in Paris, it's now. So I just did it and went to live in Paris with very little savings and created something there. So eventually I ended up in Nice, but that's another story.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. So you basically were like, I'm tired of being cold. I'm a little bored here. I have no money. Let's go.
Right. It was, a city which I won't name in Canada, but it's very flat and very cold, and it has a large mall. And, you know, it's a nice enough place to grow up, but I had tasted Paris. And so, yeah, I knew what I wanted to do. It took me quite a long time, you know, in my opinion, you know, it took me a fairly long time to do it because I was 25 by the time I left that city. But I think I left at the right time before I was tied down and I really couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect time to leave. That's the same time I came to Paris too. I was 25. I didn't have very much money in my bank account. And I was like, well, I got nothing else going on. Let's try something different. And it sounds like you made a total 182 by heading to the south of France where the weather is gorgeous a lot of the time.
Yeah, I stayed in Paris for 10 years and I became, you know, I stayed there long enough to become a jaded Parisian and to say, oh, it's so gray. It's so cold. Poor me. I live in Paris. And
it's terrible.
And so, yeah, like many people, I was drawn to the idea of the South, but many Parisians dream about going to the south of France. But at the same time, there's this kind of hesitation about leaving the capital. So you have to overcome that. So I decided I was also at the right age to do that, because I think it's nice to be in Paris when you're younger and make your career there. And then when you're a little bit more established, you can move somewhere different. And it doesn't matter if it's a smaller place.
It's funny you said 10 years because I feel like the 10-year mark is like what happens for a lot of people. It's something magical about that number. 10 years is when people are usually like, all right, I've had enough of Paris. I'm ready to, if you live there. And then you kind of went to what I like to call French Florida, because South of France is like retiree vacation.
Yeah, that's
nice
the
weather.
idea. People,
I love it.
I
and then so how did you get into cooking there?
So in Paris, so like I said, I was always into food and cooking, and I built my career around that. So in Paris, I really started off doing food writing, and because my background was in journalism, and I also had this idea when I first moved to Paris of doing tours of the markets, the food markets, and that was a very new idea at the time. And so I started doing that. There was, not many ways of advertising it yet. So I did small, it was very modest what I did.
Mhm.
And then I started working as the editor of Time Out Paris eating and drinking guide in
Oh,
Paris.
very
So
cool.
I did that for 10 years. Well, yeah, just about the whole time I lived in Paris practically. And
Mhm.
so that was a really fun job because I reviewed hundreds of restaurants in that time.
What a
And
dreamy job. Like,
yeah.
you got paid to eat.
Right.
That's very cool.
Yeah, in good years, when people still had budgets for that.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And so by then I had this huge kind of database of places that I had eaten at and knew about and food shops. And so I thought I want to, this little market tour business that I started when I first lived in France, I wanted to use the knowledge I had to turn that into something a bit more. So I created Edible Paris, which is my Paris food tour company. And at the same time, I was very drawn to Nice. So I started doing some cooking classes down in Nice. I kind of launched both of those things at the same time. And I didn't really expect to live in Nice full time. But when I started teaching the cooking classes, at the same time, Time Out shut down its Paris office, English speaking journalists. So I found myself free to live where I wanted. And I
Mhm.
thought, well, why not, be in Nice most of the time and just keep one foot in Paris with Edible Paris. So
Yeah.
that's how I've done it.
That's very smart. And it's kind of the best of both worlds because
Hmm.
both cities are wonderful in their own right and very different.
Yeah.
You definitely get more of a Italian feel in the south of France. You're
Yes.
so close to Italy. I talk a little bit about how the food is different down there from Paris.
So, like you said, it's much more Italian. The history here is actually very much tied to Italy. So, Nice didn't become French officially until 1860. And before that, it belonged to an Italian kingdom. So, Italian was the official language until that time.
Oh,
And
that's
so,
wild.
there's a lot of fresh pasta, polenta, chickpea flour used in the cooking. It's Mediterranean at the same time. So, a lot of fresh vegetables and fruits, very seasonal, very rustic. And, people were poor here for a long time. So they were really eating what they were growing. And that really appeals to me. Because in Paris, of course, you have access to so much great food, but
Hmm.
not so much it's like we said, it's grayer there. There's not as much. I mean, there's local produce, but not of the quality that we have in Nice, I would say. We have some
Yeah.
exceptional produce here.
Yeah, with all that sun and the
Yeah,
dirt down
yeah,
there and yeah,
yeah,
it's a beautiful place. If you've not been to the south of
yeah.
France, if you've already been to Paris, it's
Mm.
a totally different experience. And I,
It's very colorful.
yeah, I love the color down there. It's just I
Hmm.
feel like people are so like happier. I think the sun
They,
brings happiness.
yeah, they're also Mediterranean, so they tend to express their emotions more, whether they're
Dramatic.
good or bad. So, so if they're happy, they're happy. If they're angry, they're angry. You kind of see everything on the surface more than you would in Paris.
I never learned that so well until I got engaged to an
Yeah.
Italian.
Yes.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, your feelings are very clear
Yeah.
all the time. And do you consider cooking to be creative?
So that's an interesting question because for a long time I would have said I'm not a creative because I just cook. And I'm just a journalist who cooks, and
Hmm.
that's not creative. Because for me, creative people were people who were writing novels, or there were people who were doing cooking that was very inventive. Whereas I'm quite interested in tradition and researching how dishes were traditionally made. So I thought I was not a creative, but I've come around in with the years to say, actually, I am quite creative. I think being an outsider and being able to look at French food with an outsider's eye and kind of interpret it. I'm never going to be the grandmother that's doing it the way that generations did before
Hmm.
her. So I can kind of imitate what they do, but I'm always injecting my own little point of view into it. Plus, I think I've come to, embrace over the years that I am a creative person, like most of us are.
Hmm.
That I have that in me, and that's something I should be proud of, and not, sort of try to minimize that.
Yeah, I feel like as women, a lot of times, even
Yeah.
more so, we have this imposter syndrome where it's like, don't
Yeah.
talk about yourself, be
Yeah.
humble, you're not
Yeah.
that great. And I
Hmm.
mean, you did all that writing and now you've turned that into
Yeah.
cooking and creating
Hmm.
new things. And I think it's interesting how you talk about you're not going to be the grandma cook. So talk a
Hmm.
little bit about, are you taking old recipes and making them new and like more modern?
Well, so I love to travel when that's possible. And one of the places that I love the most is Japan. In Japan, I've been lucky to meet some cooks that are really amazing at combining Eastern and Western flavors. And I know that used to be kind of a cliche of fusion that people used to make fun of. But
Hmm.
I've seen them do it there, especially one woman I know who's an amazing cook over there. I shouldn't say just a home cook. She's not a professional cook. She cooks at home, but she's one of the most wonderful cooks I know. And she just has no complex at all about using butter in a Japanese dish or using miso in a French dish or
Hmm.
any of those things. And I thought, why for so many years was I scared of these things? And
Yeah.
so now I'm much more likely to take out all those condiments and flavors I have in my fridge and my cupboards and my dozens of spices that I have and try them with different things. And because there's all these basic flavors that we know, and one of them is umami, which is the Japanese idea of savoriness. And that can
Hmm.
come from so many different things. And those things can be quite interchangeable. So where you might put anchovies, you can also use parmesan or you can use miso and other kind of salty, deep flavors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And you're not afraid to break the rules now a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm getting old enough and more sure of myself.
You're like, I
I
can
used to be
make the
scared the
rules.
grannies would come knocking on my door at the studio.
Like it's some big secret that's been
Yeah.
unearthed. What is she doing in there?
Yeah.
And living in the south of France and running your cooking school, do you think that you've been more embraced by the local French people? I think that they
Um,
have more respect for you when you do
Oh,
creative
yeah,
things.
definitely. Well, when I do creative things, I don't know, but yeah, in a way. At first, I think they wanted to know that I really appreciated their local cuisine and their local products. And
Hmm.
when they saw that I was at the market and they saw where I bought my produce and which farmers, I'm friends with and which chefs I'm friends with, they're like, okay, she knows what she's doing.
Yeah,
And
she's cool.
so, yeah, so now I can pretty much do what I want. And it's interesting because I have some French people I don't have a big proportion of French people who take my classes, but I do have some French people who come to me to learn new things from my travels, things that I
Hmm.
can teach them that other people can't. So that's really nice when I get a group of French people and they're very open and enthusiastic.
Yeah, to take your
Yeah,
knowledge and
yeah,
learn from it. I mean,
yeah.
definitely travel is a big help in
Hmm.
many ways. So that's
Yeah.
very cool that you're mixing those two very different cultures as well. I find
Hmm.
that fascinating. And
Yeah.
why do you think French cuisine is so famous?
Well, I think they're very good at self-promotion. No, I'm joking.
I was
No,
gonna say
there's
not at all.
definitely. I think, yeah, historically, it was the cuisine of the royalty. There's the idea of haute cuisine. There is a lot of history, which is what drew me to France in the first place. That I really respected the history of France and the way they had built this kind of classical cuisine that could serve as building blocks, for doing so many different things. They gave
Mhm.
it such a structure that it's very interesting for chefs to start with that, kind of like starting with classical music and then, if you're a musician and then doing jazz after. Yeah, French cooking has that. I've always loved the way that people really enjoy life, like enjoy food with real gusto here, where they're not embarrassed to have pleasure. Whereas
Mhm.
sometimes I found in Canada and the United States, maybe that people, the idea of pleasure is more difficult for them. And
Yeah.
that's something that really drew me to France was that kind of embracing of pleasure here
Hmm.
and good wine, good cheese. There's no talk about fat or carbs or
Yeah.
any of that. So, and it has evolved a lot since I've been here because when I started writing for Time Out, it was still pretty traditional. Alain Ducasse was starting to do some new kind of things, and the modern bistro chefs were just starting out. And now it's like there's in Paris, you can hardly find a French restaurant anymore. It's like
Yeah.
it's all new. There's so much new stuff happening.
Yeah. How do you feel about that? Are you excited for that? Are you
I
kind of
think
saddened by
I
that?
think it's positive. I mean, I think I think I like it. There's
Hmm.
still a lot of really talented French chefs who are doing, I appreciate the modern type of bistro cooking that they do. I think the old cooking, it's nice that there's a few restaurants that still do that,
Yeah.
but it's too heavy for, our times. I think
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
that, yeah, the quantities of butter and cream and things that they used to use, it doesn't really work anymore. And
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
focus on fresh produce is nice now. Fresh
Yeah.
local
People are,
produce.
their
Yeah.
stomachs are changing. They can't handle
Yeah.
the heavy
Yeah.
food.
I remember feeling really ill after some of those meals I ate as a restaurant critic, coming home
Yeah.
and just thinking, how am I ever going to digest this?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. But the big difference I noticed when I moved to France is that my stomach could actually handle more too, because I
Yeah.
can't like eat bread or dairy in America. But then I came to France and I was
Yeah.
like, hey, I can eat all the gluten I want.
Yeah.
What's up?
Yeah.
So yeah, but the butter, woo, there's a lot of
Hmm.
butter. It tastes so great.
Yeah.
It tastes so right though.
It
And do
does.
you believe that anyone can be a cook?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The only criteria for being a cook is enjoying food. And,
Hmm.
food is something I think even those who say they don't care about food can appreciate. They have some foods they like. And so as long as you like food, and we all have to eat it, I think there's a potential for getting an interest in cooking. I've had one student who was in her 70s who she came with her son, who's actually a really interesting artist. And she said, I don't even have a fridge. Like, I've never cooked.
Oh wow.
And she, after my class, she was like, I got a fridge.
That's a big upgrade. She's like
Yeah. So,
70. How does
but
someone live without a fridge for so
I
long? That's
know.
crazy. So I guess she ate out a lot every
Yeah,
day.
yeah, she just bought ready-made things and she didn't cook at all.
Mm,
And then she was like, "Oh, I enjoy, the market really inspired me and I want to cook some things." And
that's very cool. And you
yeah,
helped her like change her
yeah,
as a habit that's hard to
yeah,
change.
very hard.
And what do you think is the easiest and tastiest French dish to make?
There's so many easy things, really, because I have this little book. It's called La cuisine en 10 minutes,
Hmm.
like 10-minute cooking by an chef called Pomian, who was a chef of the 1930s. Most of those things you would not make anymore. They're, like I said, our tastes have changed. And I look at some of the recipes, I'm like, no, these days I don't really want to make that for whatever,
Yeah, yeah,
whatever reason of the ingredients he used. But it shows that there are many quick sauces. There's, everything you can do with eggs in French cooking, different omelets, poached eggs, eggs cooked in ramekins in the oven with little vegetables and a little cream added to it. So, yeah, many, many things like that. Meats with simple sauces that just take a few minutes to put together, a sauce clébiche or a sauce, different yeah, good mayonnaises with other things. And that's where the Japanese ingredients can come into, because you can spice up those different sauces with ingredients from different cultures as well. Yeah, so really, yeah, most people think of French cuisine as being about the sauce. In Nice, that's a little bit different because it's more olive oil based. So we're not as into preparing sauces here. But, here a quick dish well, it's not that quick. A lot of the food here in Nice is quick to put together, but then it cooks for a long time.
it's like
So
slow roasted,
yeah,
slow
slow.
cooked. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, ratatouille is something that people make here a lot. It's not necessarily that quick to make because you have to dice all the vegetables, but it's not difficult either.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was a big thing because I was one of those people that was like, I don't know how to
Yeah.
cook. I don't like to
Yeah.
cook. My dad was the cook in the family.
Yeah.
And then I moved to France and I'm like, well, I got to feed myself now. No one
Yeah.
else is cooking for me. And
Yeah.
that was something I really liked about French cooking is it's simple. I feel
Yeah.
in America, it's like lots of ingredients, lots of flavor.
Yeah.
And I feel like in France, they focus on one flavor and they really make that flavor stand above and beyond. And you taste
Right.
that. It's not like
Yeah.
triple chocolate cookie crunch.
Yeah.
It's like lavender.
Yeah, Madeleine, yeah, with a
Yeah.
little lemon zest in it. And
Yeah. I
yeah.
love that about French cooking
Yeah.
is they kind of just get delight out of something simple.
Yeah, it's more about the quality of the ingredients often.
And do you have advice for other people who are exploring creativity? And obviously, you do a lot of different types of creative things. You were a
Mhm,
writer, now you're a cook, you teach.
mhm.
So, what advice would you give to people who are trying to figure out what they're good at, what they enjoy?
I would just say, figure out what you're good at. Go with, what you naturally. I've heard this advice given by other people before, so it's not original. I can't remember where I
Hmm.
heard this from, but
Yeah,
just
it's not important.
do, whatever you do as your hobby that makes you happy, you can turn that into your job.
Hmm.
So, it happened that when I was young, I already liked cooking and I was cooking a lot. And I also liked writing. And sometimes I think I'm lucky that I was only good at those two things because I have
Yeah,
some friends who
yeah.
are they're multi-talented. They have so many talents, they don't even know where to start. At least I had two things I knew I was pretty good at or that I developed over practice, really,
Yeah.
that I could focus on. And so I think I was lucky in that way that I wasn't too, scattered in what I like to do. But now
Hmm.
I'm trying to learn to draw because I also think, why did I tell myself all my life I couldn't draw? I think
Yeah.
drawing is also a skill that I can learn. So I
Hmm.
try not to limit myself to what I think I can do, because I think that's the big problem with creativity is we limit ourselves so much. And
Hmm.
really, if we don't listen to the negative voice, we can do a lot more than we think. So that's just the advice is just to go, trust yourself and trust your abilities.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I feel like we get really
Yeah.
tied up in titles
Yeah.
and we admire other people from afar for a long time and
Yeah.
thinking, oh, how could I possibly compare myself to that
Yeah.
guy? We
Yeah.
just think people are born into this stardom and they
Yeah.
all start at the bottom like us,
Hmm.
you pick up a pencil, you pick up a pot.
Yeah.
And going the other direction, do you have like a more narrow advice for cooks, for people starting to learn how to cook?
Follow the recipe.
Mhm. Yeah, don't go
People
off
worked,
course.
yeah, they worked really hard to make that recipe work. especially especially American cookbooks are very, if it's from a big publisher, it's produced. I mean, they've had to test and retest that recipe. So you see a lot of comments on blogs from people who are like, I substituted this, this, and this, and it didn't work. They're a little upset. And
You
you
didn't
think,
follow it.
well, yeah, I think when you're learning, you do have to follow the rules a little bit at the beginning
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
then do your own. Once you've learned the basics and the principles, you can definitely do your own thing. And you also shouldn't be, I mean, of course, you shouldn't be terrified from the beginning to substitute a different herb or whatever. Don't go to extremes, but
Yeah.
just, if a recipe is written a certain way, trust it. If it's a person you trust, then try it and see how their way works and then modify it the next time you make it.
I
Um,
think that's really good advice because
yeah,
it's kind of can be used across all forms of creativity. We
yeah,
learn the rules so we can break them.
yeah, yeah,
So, master the start of it and then take it your own direction like you've done with,
yeah,
kind of Asian cuisine.
yeah.
And you talked about designing recipes. I know you design recipes on a
Hmm.
regular basis. What's the hardest part of doing that when you're designing something new? You're
Hmm.
trying, it's like being a scientist. I mean, you're measuring
Yeah,
heat and things like that. So, how does
yeah.
that work?
So usually you would, because there's not that much new in the world of cooking, to be totally
Hmm.
honest. I mean, how many chocolate chip cookie recipes do you see on Instagram? People are reinventing the same thing again and again and again. So you start with a lot of different ideas. I guess like a lot of creative things, you kind of gather up ideas and then you do in theory, what would be your version of this? And
Hmm.
then based on your knowledge, you try to guess what's going to work. Then you do it, and then you do it again, and you do it again. Like recently, I did a cannelé recipe because I'm going to be teaching it, and I knew I had a recipe that I used to use, and I thought, well, I'll retest that. But then I want to see what happens even if it's good, even if it's almost perfect. I might make it again and change a few things, and it might be less good the second time. But
Yeah.
at least that way, I'm satisfied that I know that I tried everything. And,
Hmm.
any idea that comes in my head, I can try it and see if it actually works.
And how many tries does it usually take to get a brand new recipe down?
Uh, it can be anything from you could get it right the first time, that can happen.
Hmm.
Or you can just struggle with it for years. But
Yeah.
I find most of my recipes, especially the ones I teach, they keep evolving. Like there's never the moment where you say, oh, now I've got everything right and it can't change. Sometimes I'll just like slightly overcook something and I'm like, oh, it's better that way. I've been making it this way for 5 years and now I overcooked it and I like it better.
Yeah.
So I think you always have to be open to that too.
I think that goes back to being like the accidental creative. I mean, so many of my guests say like, oh, it was an accident. I didn't know I could do that. So I guess like you said earlier, like learn, but then, play with it. Why not? It's all about play. Yeah. And do you have any future projects you're excited about?
So obviously in this time, we've had to rethink the way we do things quite a bit.
Yes.
And my style in business has always been to just go with my gut feeling without overthinking it. So that's how I started both my businesses. And so when this happened, I found myself just wanting to do things on video, which is something I had never wanted to do before. And so I started that. And then I thought, well, I'm going to do some virtual classes because it's a way of keeping contact with my students, letting them travel a little bit, at least in an imaginary way. That's worked out much better than I expected. So that's been a really nice project. And I also, for a long, long time, I've wanted to write a cookbook. I still haven't. I've written a couple of cookbooks in French that were commissioned by a publisher. But they're
in French.
Yeah, I did that when I was still living in Paris.
That's even more difficult.
Yeah, but I have yet to write my own personal cookbooks. So that's definitely a project that I have to do, but I still haven't found that moment, even now, where I've sat down and started writing that book. So that's a project that must be done.
Well, now you have more time than ever. Yeah. So between those video classes,
I have no excuse anymore.
I was like, "You're a writer, Rosa."
Yeah.
What is your excuse? And where can listeners find you online?
So my Instagram is Petit Farci _ Edible Paris. So Petit Farci is the name of my cooking school in Nice. It refers to a stuffed vegetable dish that we have here. And I'm also on Facebook under Rosa Jackson, Petit Farci and Edible Paris. I've got a blog called rosajackson.com.
Perfect. So I'll make sure to share that in the show notes. And thank you so much for talking to me today.
Oh, that was really fun.
I'm looking forward to your cookbook.
Yes. Thank you. Keep reminding me.
Thanks so much for tuning in to La Vie Creative. You can find more information on MissParisPhoto.com. And if you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word for all my creative guests. We have the power to help them to keep doing what they love. See you next time.